It's 5:30 on a Monday. It's time for Fine Tailored Suits, brought to you by Quality Tire with 10 locations across Saskatchewan. QualityTire.ca. Glenn Suter is with us, and Suits, people were very entertained, whether it was intentional or not, that TSN, it was either TSN or ESPN Classic that aired the 30 for 30 about the XFL. For some folks, that was just a chef's kiss moment. It was perfect.
Yeah, and it reminded me that, let's put it this way. It strengthened my resolve that we should, if we are as a league going into these discussions with the XFL, and they're going to be ongoing for the next few years, that we go in a position of strength. I mean, when you look at what was that first attempt back in 2001 with Dick Ebersol, who at the time was named the most powerful television executive on the planet, basically, and Vince McMahon in his prime. I mean, you were looking at two major power brokers that it was a debacle that they couldn't get it done. So, I think it sort of strengthened my resolve. And I know you raise an eyebrow, DT, at the thought of the CFL that is in some financial issues, that they would actually go into these talks in a position of strength. But I think they are. I honestly think they are. The XFL has got to separate itself from the other two attempts.
I don't see what the CFL's strength is other than we own 9 teams and 9 committed fan bases. They have to be in a terrible spot for money wise, right? $20 to $30 million in losses in the last year they played. What's reported 60 to 80 million for 2020. Goodness knows what 2021 will bring. I envision a side, and see a side is maybe the wrong way to say it, but I envision a side that is looking for help and needs it very badly. So if I'm borderline bankrupt and they're taking my house on Friday, if I don't make the payment, I'm going to do a lot of things, and I'm going to do a lot of things that maybe I didn't want to do. That's just kind of where I look at the CFL, and I kind of put them in that spot, whether they deserve to be there or not. That's my perception of where the CFL is at right now.
Well, and you're not alone. You're not alone in that perception. But I'm going to change the angle that we approach this for a second, because I went back on the weekend and I looked at exactly what all the principals in this discussion have been talking about, exactly what they said. And that means the commissioner, Randy Ambrosie, the governors, the owners in the CFL, and those who lead the XFL in their head office. So all of those principles, if you go back and you look at what they've actually said, not the speculation from media across the country, but what they've said, I'm going to choose, and some may say this is a naive approach, but I'm going to choose to believe that what they've said is the truth, and that these are very preliminary discussions with the sole purpose to build some sort of partnership that will grow the game in North America and grow the game in the world. I'm going to believe in that for a couple of reasons, and bear with me here for this, because first of all, when you look at the ownership in the Canadian Football League, and you look at Bob Young and basically the late David Braley and what he has done within his will to protect financially the BC Lions, not just for a month or two, but well beyond that, even though he's passed, and they're working through that now. So Rick Lallisher is the president in BC who is now managing the football team and trying to look for the new owners. But when you think about those owners, and you can go across the board with Ottawa and Montreal, the new guys there, and say they're doing it for the right reasons, and they have. Certainly Bob Young in Hamilton. And I watched the turnaround with that franchise from standing in a park with John Wells in the booth in Old Iverwin Stadium and looking at a very sparse crowd and thinking, this could be the franchise that is in most trouble, and probably most trouble in the history of the league. And then watch that turn around with Bob Young in place. Mm-hmm. And the reasons that Bob Young even got involved in the CFL. So keep that in mind as I as I move to why I'm going to choose to believe that these are preliminary discussions.
Okay.
Because those guys, Craig Reynolds, Rick Lallisher, Bob Young, the new owners in Ottawa, the new owners in Montreal, these guys know that that if we were in that dire of a situation where this deal had to be made or the league would collapse and we wouldn't have pro football in our country, if that were true, I'm not sure they would hide that information from the stakeholders, the hundreds of people that rely on the Canadian Football League, not just players, but the hundreds of employees, from the kid selling popcorn to the star quarterback, are relying on the league and the game in our country to put food on the table. If it was that dire, and this was a do or die sort of scenario we're looking at, they're going to keep us in the dark on that and not allow us to put together a game plan for our own families. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second.
How far down do you really think that should go, though? Because the kid selling popcorn, well, if it's a CFL or XFL game, he or she can still sell popcorn. How far down the list does that need to go at this moment?
Well, again, now we start to slide back into speculation, though, on that part of it. Because you know what I'm saying is that if you just are talking about if you're speculating that this is a do or die decision,
right?
That we have to do this and make it a 4-down game or whatever, or we're going to lose pro football in our country. If that's true, I'm not sure that these solid people that are in charge of our teams and have bought into our teams, like Bob Young, for the right reasons, are going to keep us in the dark if it was that dire. I just don't believe that. So I'm going to choose to believe that they are in preliminary talks, that they're trying to grow the game. They are impressed by The Rock and his social media presence and his marketing ability. It will be a different approach to the XFL than it's ever been, because The Rock is now in charge and not Vince McMahon. So all of that means let's be open-minded. But let me add this. Let me add this when it comes to our commissioner and how he's handled it. He used the word transparent. And he's used the word transparent, which I think is a good thing. I think you would agree with me on that. That we want our league to tell us what they're doing and tell us what the plans are and tell us if they are in meetings. So now he has set the precedent. Now he has said, we want to be transparent. We believe that's a good thing. Okay, we'll keep an open mind, but now you have to be transparent when you meet with them again. And you have to be transparent when the details start to arise. When you start to talk about different topics. If merger ever does come up, you need to be transparent with that discussion and then let us debate as a country whether that's a good or a bad thing. And while we're on the topic of transparency, let's be more transparent when it comes to the return to play details. Because now you've opened it up that the league wanted to be transparent, that they were, how did they put it? Talking about talking. They were starting to talk about talking. So, okay, wherever that is, we don't know unless you're in the meeting. But you mentioned the word transparent in Randy Ambrosie. So now let's be transparent with all of it, including what our return to play plans are for 2021.
What's your definition of transparent when it comes to Ambrosie talking about his meetings with the XFL? Because when he was on here and he said, oh, we're talking about talking, all that came to mind was you guys must have been talking for months in advance of announcing to us that you're talking. So in my mind, I can't really pat him on the back for transparency, because there were clearly conversations, and we know there were conversations well in advance of them last week saying, hey, we're talking to the XFL. So how much I'm going to pat him on the back for transparency when it was hidden until whatever was the precipitating event last week that made this news come out.
Yeah, I know where you're going, and I know what you're saying, because all the way up to that interview you had with him, we could be questioning whether or not that's ever been a strategy in the league office, even before Randy Ambrosie was the commissioner. And I can go back 2 or 3 commissioners. Has the CFL head office ever been transparent enough for fans, for stakeholders? I'm not sure they ever have. So leading up to your interview with Randy Ambrosie, then I would say, how long have you been talking? So there really wasn't transparency, but you had the interview and he used the word. And he has said, now we want to be transparent with our fans. That's where we're telling you it's in the preliminary stages, but we want to be transparent with our fans. So now he has set the precedent. Now that's the bar.
Yeah.
So let's now be transparent in all league, whatever they're working on.
I feel like, just from talking to folks, I feel like within this, there are maybe 20 people who know the real story. Maybe like 9 governors, Ambrosi, the gang on the XFL side, broadcast partners, and some journalists. I feel like there's maybe 20 people who know the full story. And that is very intentional, right? It's always intentional that, you know what, we're going to release this on our terms, and fingers crossed that we can get to release it on our terms, and that Tim Baines of the Ottawa Sun doesn't find out and get the full story out there before we're ready. It's so I everything else that comes down to speculation, and how informed is that speculation, and how much do I trust what this person says versus what that Muppet on the radio in Regina says, right? We get to this. These are hard situations, and they're hard because it's a game that we love and we're passionate about, right? And we don't want to, like, I don't want to be on here going, oh, I think this is for real and very serious, because I have a vendetta against the CFL, or I think that things should go bad for them. I feel like it's very serious. These conversations are very serious and been happening for months because, one, the people I've talked to, and two, the evidence, circumstantial though it is, leads me very strongly in that direction.
Yeah, you're right, DT, and that's why there has been such a passionate, I won't call it outcry, but discussion, debate over, where this is, the speculation, what are the discussions, what could this mean? All of those talks. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, that we are having the conversation. And again, I would like to see more transparency, much like the handling of the pandemic, or mishandling, depending on how you look at it, from our political leaders. I want the truth. I want the truth. I'm a stakeholder. This game puts food on the table for my family. And I'm not the only one. There are thousands in our country in the same position. Mm-hmm. I want the truth. Give me the truth. Let me decide how I'm going to debate that truth, or how I feel about it, and put together a game plan for my family. And then we'll move from there. And leaders will be held responsible for their decisions and their the direction that they take the league. They will be the ones that eventually have to make decisions on this. Now, there's going to be a great national debate depending on what these talks really are. I like the speculation. I think we should continue to speculate on what it could be. It puts football in the news. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want transparency. I want the league to be informing us on a weekly basis about the return to play. I want the league to be telling us exactly what the topics of discussion are when they get into those meetings with the XFL and with The Rock. I mean, let's have The Rock address Canadian football fans. I mean, let's get it out there. I'd love to see Randy Ambrosi on their website on a weekly basis with an update, even if the update is the same from the week before. That's okay.
Yeah.
I want to hear the truth.
We've been, on several fronts, right? As fans have been clamoring for something like that along the way. Oh, are you going to the federal government? Where's that at? Are you talking to the players? Where's that at? And the commissioner has been on the radio a fair number of times in each market in the last year. I think fans would absolutely love more. I want to go back to your point about Bob Young and the Hamilton Tiger Cats, because I don't really remember Hamilton before Bob Young, but the point you brought up about Bob Young came in, and the team is now flourishing in Hamilton with a brand new stadium. I took that back to, Bob Young came in with a lot of money and a plan and the ability to sustain losses. And to me, that's what the promise of whatever affiliation with the XFL brings to the CFL. It would be a plan and the ability to sustain losses through their partners at Redbird Capital. Tell me what you remember of Bob Young and his impact on the Ticats.
Well, it completely turned it around. It completely turned that franchise around, and for the better. They went through a couple of different ownership groups. Braley, even
Right.
early on, was part of an ownership, situation in Hamilton. So it started to really crumble. I mean, Iverwin Stadium was becoming, broken down building that wasn't putting the fans in the stands. It looked real bleak. I mean, I remember standing in the booth before a game and looking at what looked like, a handful of fans prior to a game in Hamilton and Ivor Wynn, and saying to John Wells, this is going to be a tough one. There's not a lot of crowd here. And he said, this is the franchise that really concerns me. We may lose the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I thought to him, and we had the discussion, if we do our job correctly in selling the game from this television booth, we can maybe be a positive influence on making sure that doesn't happen. And Bob Young steps in and does it for the right reasons, in the memory of his brother, who absolutely loved the Ticats, was a huge Ticat fan. And he becomes, as he calls it, the caretaker of the team. And some of those years there were small profits, some of those years were break even, and some of those years he lost money. But I think there's a very different perspective. If you're a media person in Toronto, DT, that is looking at the CFL experience, I think you're talking about this as a do or die situation with the XFL. If you're someone in Saskatchewan or Winnipeg, Hamilton fan, someone in Ottawa that is looking at what they've done with that franchise over the last couple of years, you're looking at it a very different perspective. Yes, lots of work to do. Yes, we want more fans in the stands. Yes, we need a better financial plan. We definitely need more discipline from our owners and governors from these teams when it comes to spending and salary caps and going over them and finding ways around them and things like that. We have to do a lot of those things. Change the marketing. I mean, that's another whole show. but if you're looking at this league from Saskatchewan's perspective, you're looking at it very differently than you are from Toronto's. I was in Vancouver when Bob Ackles took over the BC Lions, and that stadium was rocking, and it was fantastic, and the team was great financially. I mean, not great in NFL terms or things like that, but was making money, wasn't losing money. And then that changed. David Braley was taking care of the franchise, but wasn't as much directly involved as he was in the past. And things changed there. And now they have to rebuild that. So I've seen the change in a positive way in both Hamilton and in BC.
Yeah, which is great. And you hope there's a way that can come for the CFL as a whole as we try to get through these. Zinger, $5 fine, unprecedented times.
Oh, DT, you went so long without it.
I went so long without Suits. We didn't tell you $5 fine if you use the phrase unprecedented times. You can just e-transfer Zinger at any point. Are you okay with that?
I'm totally in, because if I hear it one more time, I'm going to go nuts. I'm with you.
In these unprecedented times,
I'll send you my email.
Things happening all over the country. You mentioned transparency of return to play. Your colleague Farhan Lalji had a tweet. I wanted to get in here, Suits. He says, hearing from sources that an on-time start to the CFL season is still very much on the table. Within that, they've built in flexibility so they can still have as full a season as possible. Modeling is in place for how much lead time is needed for a variety of start dates. Farhan's not making that up. He's talking clearly to someone who is plugged in the Canadian Football League. So even if it's not directly from Randy Ambrosie here on the Sports Cage, we get valuable information from some of our games great reporters doing their work. So very much on the table that we start on time.
Yeah. And I think if we go back and we actually listen to what Randy Ambrosie has been saying, he talked about the flexibility in the plan. He talked about the fact that they'd love to keep at the front of their minds the fact that they'd want to go with a full schedule and start in June if they possibly could, maybe with fans, maybe without, if they possibly could. but that they're ready to pivot. They're ready to be flexible. So that was a real positive report and a good one. And just to wrap up the thought, DT, that, maybe I'm a little naive here, but again, I'm going to trust and believe because they've done it for the right reasons, these owners. And I'm going to keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. Let's not lose our minds. And let's see what The Rock wants to talk about. I'm all for it. And let's be transparent now, because now the door is open to that on return to play. Focus on that. Get our players. I'd love to see a press conference very soon, if possible, with Randy Ambrosie talking with maybe Solomon Elamimian or someone from Brian Ramsey from the Players Association, and they do a press conference together saying, we're ready to go. We're ready to play. I think that's what we're waiting to hear, because even with all of these talks, we're talking about the future anyway, 22, 23, talking about down the road. So let's get back on the field in 21. And I know everyone's pushing hard to do that.
We should, before we get out of here, we got to mention Calvin McCarty.
Yes.
Hanging up after 13 seasons. I remember him from the last 5, 6, 7 years of his career, where he's now a full-time fullback in Edmonton, who once a year would make some catch that just blows your mind. He turns the inside hand and stabs a one-hander as he runs into the flat. You go back into his numbers and go, this is a guy in his second year who had, I think it was 80 catches. You saw his whole career. Tell us about Calvin McCarty.
Well, let me start with a great teammate, because I think that's most important. I always have, and I always will believe that. I think, that when you get to the pro level, especially, you're talking about talent levels that are where everybody's good. Every player is good. That's why they're there. That's why they made the team. When you're talking about their talent, but who's going to be a great teammate? Who's going to be unselfish? Who's going to put the team's goals ahead of their own? Because that's how you build a championship team. And Calvin McCarty has been that guy. First of all, he does have a ring back in 2015.
Yep.
203 games, has been an outstanding teammate, has played on all the teams, has been one of the great special teams players in the league's history, I believe. Anytime he was asked to do anything, whether it's catch the ball out of the backfield, play tight end, block, this is a guy that growing up in college and high school in Vancouver, and then college just across the border, he was a star player, and then was asked to change his role when he got to the pro level in Edmonton, played all 13 years there. I think Calvin McCarty is a Hall of Fame player. And he might not have the all-stars, he might not have the flashy numbers, but to me, this is what the Canadian Football Hall of Fame should be about, and is about a Canadian who plays 13 years in pro football in his country, represents it so well on and off the field, is a fantastic teammate, plays so consistently and so well in any role that he's been asked to play. That's a Hall of Famer to me.
Yeah.
I would put Calvin McCarty in the Hall of Fame. It's up to me.
Yeah. I don't know what exactly they call it in Edmonton, if it's the Ring of Honor. Here, of course, it's the Plaza of Honor, but he may not have been as great. Warren Moon impact, Tom Scott, guys I think of from my childhood, but 13 years with the same franchise and the impact he's had cumulatively, one, that doesn't happen anymore. And two, it is certainly worthy of the highest of honors. 1 minute.
Well, DT, we put in offensive linemen that don't have statistics. I know it's easy to talk about a guy like Warren Moon or guys like that are automatics because of their stats and the importance of the quarterback position and all of that, and they deserve to be there, no question. But if we're putting O lineman in, how about the guy who plays on 5 special teams?
Yep.
Start at tailback if you need him. Start at tight end if you need him there. We'll play fullback every down that you play a fullback on the field. Did everything well and did everything as he was asked to do for 13 straight years and 203 games. Because of his role on the team, he's not going to have flashy stats, but that doesn't diminish his importance or take away from his importance. This guy was a great teammate. I think he's a Hall of Famer.
I like it. I like it. He's certainly deserving. Calvin McCarty retiring after 13 years onto greener pastures, as they say. Suits, run up against the clock. Thank you, my friend. We're giving away a jersey of yours on Thursday. Oh boy.
Yes, and we will get to Drew Brees really quickly with Drew Brees back on Thursday. Let's do it on Thursday because I think he bucked a lot of trends and biases and things, and it's worth the discussion. It's really worth the discussion. Yeah,
I like it. I like it. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, thanks, DT.